Welcome to the Living Ageless and Bold podcast. Each episode, I bring you amazing women who inspire, educate, and share their experiences and journeys along the way. So grab a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, find a cozy spot, and let's relax and have some fun hearing what can be accomplished after 55. Hey, everybody. Oh, today's going to be so much fun. I have actually stalked our next guest on Instagram, and I had to have her because she's just so happy and so cool and so fun. So please welcome Diane Britt-Smith. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing well. It's so good to see you and to meet you, Christina. Thank you.
You are so happy and so positive. I want everyone to find you on Instagram and follow you just because I love seeing you in my feed every day. You just bring me so much joy. But the thing that, and we always kind of tell people where you are now and then we go back because as we know at our age, there's a journey and you don't wake up one morning, you left a career, which we're going to talk about, and you are now an actress, a model. I saw for L'Oreal. That's not, you just don't wake up at 61 and have this happen. I know you're so amazing. So, and for those of you watching on YouTube, you can see this and feel the energy, but you'll hear it in her voice too for our podcast listeners. But let's talk about Diane and where you started. Like, how did your whole story begin?
My career, my first career or chapter 2?
Oh, let's start chapter 1. Because you have to have chapter 1 to get to chapter 2. And then there might even be a chapter 3.
Yes, indeed. I realized that recently. So in a nutshell, I went to school for radio, television, film, communications, broadcasting. So I spent more than 40 years total in that genre. And I could not have had a more rewarding career. I spent 30 years at the Voice of America, an international media agency, traveling mainly sub-Saharan Africa. But I racked up more than 30 countries there. I've since done a few more. Just covering stories about people and their resilience, what they're doing to make not such great circumstances the best they can be. So that was my beat for sub-Saharan Africa. I went on to be a manager, creative director. I left as the director of training during COVID. Could not have had a more rewarding career. Transition to chapter 2. During the first part of my career in broadcasting, I did a little bit of acting and modeling on the side in DC, which is where we lived. We lived in Maryland, then we moved to DC. And I got the acting bug. As a manager and a leader in an organization, you can't just up and leave and go to auditions. So right. I slowed it down. Yeah. And kept doing what I was doing and enjoying it. But COVID made me realize maybe it's time to stop this and move on to chapter 2. And I left early and jumped right into acting and modeling. So that was how I got to where I am now. That was at the end of May 2021.
I just did an interview yesterday, and I'm not sure how this will line up with your interview, but Joanne Littman wrote the book Next, which I highly recommend. Oh. And it's actually based on neuroscience and then also real people like you. And it's interesting. They talk about how you get to reinvention. And you've got to have that struggle, and then you've got to have the stop. And COVID was the stop for so many people that then you can get to reinvention, which it sounds like is exactly what you did.
Yes, that is exactly what I did.
So was it hard to walk away? It sounds like your career was amazing. And I'll tell you, a crazy small world, because not a lot of people know what Voice of America is. My uncle was actually an international sports broadcaster out of Germany for them.
Really?
For his career. Yes.
That's awesome.
So I have a soft spot for that.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And you're right. Very few people know what Voice of America is because they don't have a constituency in the U.S. It's all international. You can see it online. But truly, I can't say enough good stuff about it.
So tell me, because we just did a trip to Africa, and it was not on my bucket list. My son is 25, and he had gotten a promotion, and with his promotion, in the finance world, it's crazy. They gave him an extra 2 weeks vacation. And he's like, Mom, none of my friends have this extra 2 weeks. Let's go on a safari. And I said, okay, how are you going to say no to
Love
your
it.
son, right? Of course you're going to say yes. It was the most transformational trip of my life.
Where did you go?
We went to Kenya and Tanzania.
Perfect. Yes.
And the people, the Kenyan people are the kindest, most beautiful. It really changed my life. And meeting tribes people, we met a young man from the Maasai tribe, and he's 30, my son's 25. And we just sat and talked for hours about his life and his childhood and my son's. And it was unbelievable. So I would love to hear, like, what's your favorite story that you covered? I mean, 40 years is a long time, but, or a couple favorites.
Yes. So I don't have any story that showed transformation, but I want to touch on something you said before. A lot of people don't have Africa, the continent. It's 54 countries, so it's very difficult to paint it with a broad brush. It's like saying Europe. Okay, so where?
Right.
Everywhere I went, I learned something. I felt something, felt like I was going home. People were so welcoming. The stories that impacted me the most were the ones where there was the greatest transformation. So polio eradication was the effort was big when I was going to sub-Saharan Africa. HIV/AIDS and doing as much to mitigate that in an atmosphere of few resources. So to see people overcome their situations. And a lot of people don't know a lot about sub-Saharan Africa. So any chance I got to share stories. So that's it in a nutshell. No one favorite story, but I took my kids to Africa. I was determined to let them know that Africa wasn't Africa as a continent. It's not a monolith, and it's not what you see on TV and you hear. So it was transformational for me many times, but subsequently, my kids have been a few times and have a love for the continent as well.
Yeah. I highly recommend it. If you have never been, and people who are like, oh, I'm not sure, I'm like, oh, put it on the top of your bucket list. And if a safari is, for sure, because that was amazing. So you decide on this career. Are you still in the DC area? Because that's where I am. So just curious.
Oh, yeah? So mainly in New York, back and forth to DC a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot.
So is that because of you launched this new career, which I just think is so cool, because so many people think, and I say this in all my episodes, I mentor college students, I talk to them, and they just don't realize, until they hear my story. I mean, I graduated with a double major in political science and German, and I'm now a lifestyle expert. I have a podcast. I'm on TV. Like, has nothing to do with any of that. I might show a German product.
Amazing.
Yeah, but
your trajectory too. Yeah,
exactly. All later in life. So realizing that you can pivot and change. You can do anything you want to do. So how did you get into that?
And that is the message. I describe myself as a pro-age advocate now, whatever form that takes. And how I got into it, again, I was always interested. We were back and forth to New York for many years. Our adult children live here. They're actors. And so I had an injection of, you can do this, Mom. You can do this, a lot. So I started taking classes. I started looking up casting directors on Instagram and taking more classes. And it just sort of took off from there. There is more work for my demographic in New York than there is in DC. So another reason why we're in New York more than we are in DC. Also, my husband's mother lives in New England, so we're there a lot. So the convergence of all those factors made the decision to jump into this feet first just so easy. And commercial acting, commercial modeling is where I've spent the bulk of my time. But I also do voice acting as well. So yeah, it's just so much fun. And you don't know what you don't know. So I had done a little bit of it over the years, didn't know what that meant, what it would mean to be full-fledged. Wouldn't change a thing or look back for anything.
Well, and that's one of the things we talked about when Joanne, the book Next, is you don't realize that everything in your life kind of goes on top of the other thing. You can't get to where you are if you haven't had all of these experiences, all of these transformations in your life. And I truly believe that we have so much more confidence as we're older because we don't care.
Sure.
Right?
Yes.
So somebody says, Diane, you're not a fit. Okay, thanks. I'll try over here.
Exactly. Yes. You have to be able to take rejection.
Yes.
Not take it personally. What's for you is for you. The 4 Agreements. Have you heard of this book?
No.
Amazing. Look it up when you can. It's an easy read, but it includes that. Don't take things personally. Rejection is difficult, whether you're 5 or 55.
Right.
But the way we handle it is much different.
I'm a PR strategist by trade. And I will tell my clients that look in a mirror and say no to yourself over and over again, because you're going to have to get through a lot of no's to get the yes. You'll get the yes. And I've told my kids that too. Just ask, because the worst anyone's going to say is no. And if you learn to handle no, you can't. And you have adult children too, that generation that they grew up in. I remember swim team, and they would come home with like a 19th place ribbon. Like, you guys throw it away. You're going to apply for a job and 200 people are going to apply and one person's going to get it. You know, that I was tough love mom with that stuff.
I love that. I love that.
But you had to, because everybody was a winner and everybody was getting it. And I'm like, that's great when you're 10, but when you're 21, I don't want you to lose your mind because you didn't get the job. And it's hard, and you've got to teach.
They need to hear that. They need to hear that. We are worried and concerned and want to build their self-esteem, but we can't lead them down a path where life and society is going to smack them down. And they're like, well, why didn't you prepare me for this? You know,
exactly.
My kids were divers, springboard and high divers for many, many years through college and beyond. Yeah. One of them, before he became an actor, was a professional diver.
Wow.
Yes. And they started off swimming and realized that they weren't very fast. So they had been gymnastics people for many years. So they walked over to the diving board after swim practice and started hurling themselves off the board. The diving coach said, no more swim team, you're divers. And they went on to excel in big ways. So again, what's for you is for you.
Right. And again, if they hadn't tried, if they didn't realize they weren't good at something. Yes. And this was, again, from this interview, which it was so poignant and so on topic of this whole podcast. But there was an engineer that she had interviewed who literally did a CV of her failures. Everything she had failed at, and 15 dissertations turned down, X amount of research not done, whatever. And she posted it and it went viral. But what she found as a result of listing her failures is that she wasn't good at lab work. She was really good at computational work. So she shifted what she was doing in her career to get away from this side where she kept failing to what she excelled at, and had a whole new career, a whole new reinvention because of all of her failures.
I love that.
Is that great?
And she learned something from each one. I can't wait to get this book. Something you mentioned has resonated with me. There's a connection between my careers and my hobby. So as a producer, a video producer, I was a storyteller. You're telling stories. It's other people's stories, but you're sharing them, conveying them to the rest of the world. As I'm a street portrait photographer, and I do the same thing. So I go out and I meet people. I have a separate Instagram for that, and I talk to them about their story. Sometimes I just take their photo, but it's a story. As an actor, a commercial actor, I'm telling a story. So eventually, hopefully, I'll get into film and TV or stage. That's storytelling. So I realize that at the core of everything is my desire to tell stories in different ways. Because I've wondered, okay, why did you go from this to this to this? That's the reason.
Isn't it? And I'm telling you, with my career, if somebody had told me 10 years ago that I would be speaking on stages. I did not, I picked my major around the major. I didn't have to take public speaking. And I can now, right?
Really?
I really did. Now you can like go to community college and do it. That wasn't an option back then.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've spoken in front of thousands of people. If you had told me I would be on TV, no way. Like all these things that I never dreamed possible really started in my late 40s. Like I tell the kids this all the time, like I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up until I hit 50. And now,
I love that.
And now the podcast is another iteration. Again, I never dreamed of. And it's, again, I go back to the book because it was yesterday, but she said, you'll wake up in the middle of the night and have an aha moment. And I couldn't sleep last night. And I had this aha moment of what I really see this podcast is, again, telling stories. I want to tell stories of all these women that I interview because you all are amazing in your journey and how you got there to inspire other women. And I actually had a name, and would you believe it was available on GoDaddy?
Yes.
I was like, okay, first thing I woke up this morning, I got right on the computer. I was like, okay, there's a sign. So
yes, indeed. A huge sign.
Yeah. Reinvention journeys.
Yes. Yes. I love that.
Yeah. So tell us about your kids. How did they get the acting bug?
So that's a good question. The younger one graduated from Virginia Tech in 2015 as a finance major.
Wait, go Hokies. I am a Hokie. My husband is a Hokie. My son and daughter are Hokies. So
I love that.
We have to pause for 1 minute because you are a Hokie by giving birth to one. Yeah. So my son was finance too. So that's
okay. Wow.
Okay.
So I graduated from James Madison University in communications, as I just mentioned. So close to Virginia Tech. But anyway, they went, my older son, I'll get to him in a second, went to George Mason as a diver. Younger son went to Virginia Tech as a diver. I start with him because somewhere around his sophomore year, he knew that he made the right decision to major in finance, but he decided he wanted to be an actor.
Okay.
So he had done a little bit of research before. We sent him to a workshop in New York during the summer. He graduated. They were dive coaches. So he made a bunch of money the summer after he graduated from Virginia Tech, moved to New York City, got a teleworking job, a couple side hustles, and just started soaring. So he's a film and TV actor. One of the things people know him for, see him on the street, Jenny in Georgia. He played young Zion on that series, a great show. Older son was a criminal justice major, graduated in 2012 from George Mason. Again, went on to be a professional diver, theme parks, cruise ships. Decided when that came to an end, he wanted to move to New York with his brother and become an actor. He also had a little bit of an itch before. So it's very cool to watch.
Yeah.
They are my heroes. They are fearless. They are my biggest supporters and source of encouragement. And they coach me on acting. So yeah, it's awesome.
But let's take a step back, Mom, that you have two amazing young men, probably because you're a pretty awesome mom.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sounds like you raised some great boys. And I love on your Instagram all of the positivity of aging. And I love it too. I'm again, this confidence. And you ask like, should I wear this? Should I not wear this? Should you be gray or not gray? And we talk about this. Like me personally, I don't like gray because of the texture of the hair that I can't do it the way I like it. So for me, I color it. I don't care, but I love, like, you're gorgeous.
Thank you. It's not easy being gray, especially at the beginning. But, I think that people who criticize, because pro-aging means a lot of different things to different people.
Right.
I am bothered when people criticize people who make the decision to let their hair go gray. And I'm bothered by the reverse. If hair color is for you and that's what you want, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. So we just need to leave people be. Now, whether I think I look better with my hair colored or gray, that's my decision. And social media is wonderful, but it's full of vitriol. And it's just awful sometimes. My mother started graying at age 17. I started at 30. She never colored her hair. I never colored my hair. I used to play with color when I was younger. I realized this is way too much trouble.
Right.
And
It's a lot of work.
she let me, it is. She let me know how she felt about it in terms of what actually ages you. And it's not your hair. It's your attitude. It's your face, your wrinkles, your clothes. If you look frumpy, all of those things. But there is nothing wrong with aging. And even if it does age you, be okay with it if you're okay with it.
Right.
So I think it's just a whole thing about it. And I don't want us to be invisible. And that's what happens sometimes when other people are looking at us and trying to knock us down. And we need to rise above that and say, yes, I'm getting older, but I made the decision to color my hair. I'm getting older, and yes, I'm going to let these gray hairs fly. Whatever it is, we need to be okay with it. And we really need to stop criticizing people. And I don't mean we. I mean people out there who are
outside.
It's just awful.
Do you remember? I'm a huge Sex and the City fan, and I love Sarah Jessica Parker. If anybody listening knows her, I would love to interview her. But one of the things when they were doing the reboot is they were filming and somebody got a picture of her, with some gray and lambasted her in the media. Oh. And I would love to go back. I keep saying I'm going to do it and I want to do it. I bet whoever wrote that was a man, and I'm not male bashing, but or a younger woman who hasn't grayed yet, who doesn't know. It was not, I cannot believe that it was a 50-something-year-old woman who bashed Sarah Jessica Parker about that.
Yeah.
So that's when I'm like, we have to stay together and support it.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
And do you know, we are the healthiest and the wealthiest demographic ever in history. Ever.
Yes.
So advertisers listening, we have the money. It's all, we're holding the purse string, so you better be nice to us.
And that's why you bring a really important point. That's why I'm able to become a commercial model. Because our demographic has great purchasing power, and advertisers know that. It's why social media influencing is growing among older people, because we have purchasing power. And we didn't necessarily see us on ads before, and now we do. It is a wonderful thing.
I love it. So what's your favorite thing you've done with that?
I can't say that I have one favorite, but I like different things for different reasons. So I've done some healthcare ads, Medicare Advantage ads, because there's a lot of misinformation out there about Medicare and Medicare Advantage. So I love that. Cosmetics, skincare. I just was working on a post this morning, didn't even think about skincare too much many years ago. And now I do. I read labels and I study brands. And so I would say the cosmetics things, the hair things that I've done, all awesome. I did an airline spot for Delta Airlines. It played when you got on the plane. That was fun. So yeah, lots of fun stuff. No one particular, each gig is awesome in its own way.
Yeah. And it's so great. You get to see things and try things. And I was watching one of them because I have just found rosehip oil that I use on my face. And you were testing an oil. Doesn't that feel so good at this age? When you put that oil on at night, it's like, you just feel the wrinkles going away.
Nail on the head. Yes. Yes. I so feel like that.
Oh my God. Well, that's exciting. So what are you working on now?
So I don't have anything coming up. I do take that back. I do have one cosmetics thing coming up. You can't say what it is until they air.
Right.
And I'm working on a lot of social media things and just have my hands in different places to see where I can go. And when I get a chance, I go out and practice my street portrait photography. I've been doing more speaking lately. I spoke to a women's group on Saturday. Just getting the word out, encouraging people to think about pro-aging in a positive way.
And if you wanted to give, one piece of advice to women listening who maybe want to get more involved in the pro-aging space, doing what you're doing, whether it's influencer marketing, sponsorship, advertising, that kind of stuff, what do you recommend? How can they start?
So I get this question a lot, and each of the things I'm doing is different. Voiceover, for example, is something I've done through the years. So I did have some training before I jumped into it. Same thing with acting and modeling. You need to do lots of research and lots of training. You don't just call up an agent and say, put me on your roster. That scouting happens, but it's not as common as people think. So the number one thing I would say is research, and research until you can't research anymore. And then look for people on social media who look like you, scour Pinterest, and just really start making a plan for what you want to do. And your plan may be different from someone else's plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you found that any of the agencies are starting to specialize in women over 50? Or that's...
I think that may be the way to go, but I don't know of any yet that just do that, because it's difficult to be that narrow, I would imagine, for an agency to make money, to make a bunch of money. The same thing with petite modeling. So I'm petite, and I would love to be able to do runway, a senior runway. And there are very few people who do that, a handful or less. So no, I think there's a division for older models and a division for petite, but they do other things.
So fun. So fun. So we wrap up every episode with the same 2 questions. What is the greatest thing that you have accomplished since you turned 50?
Oh, wow. The single greatest thing, I would say evolving as a mother. Being a parent to young sons, particularly young Black boys in this age of George Floyd and everything, to have been half of the team with my husband, to have our relationship evolve to where we have, where it's great. They've become my parents in many ways. So we have, I hesitate to use the word friendship because I'm still the mama.
Right.
But,
absolutely. Yeah. My son's 6'5", and I'm like, I am still your mother. I'm still the boss.
Exactly. Right. So I would say post 50, that's it. We have a great relationship.
Oh, that's amazing. Nobody said that, and I love that. I personally love this relationship I have. Mine are 23 and 25, but this adult relationship that I have, it's really fun.
Yes.
Somebody told me once, every stage gets better. And
yes,
I truly
indeed.
believe that. It's been amazing. And then the last question is, where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Oh, boy. So I have sometimes I see a squirrel. Oh, there's another squirrel. Oh, wait, let me go vacuum. I have that. So it's very difficult for me to say. I had no idea that I would be where I am right now. So I would say, if I had to guess, more of the same, just maybe larger platforms. I'd love to be able to speak to groups of women, groups of people about pro-aging, and some of the things that we don't necessarily think about to age well. So I'd like to be able to do more of that on a bigger platform.
I love that. I'm going to connect you. She's a regular guest that we have on here, Melissa Batchelor. She's Melissa B, the PhD. So she's an RN and a PhD, and she has a podcast with millions and millions of views. That's called, what is it called? This is Getting Older. Anyway, I will send it to you, but I think it would be great for her to talk about this, because that's her whole platform, is what, the positive things about aging. Of course, she has a lot of helpful things on there, but it would definitely be, you would be amazing on that.
Thank you. I look forward to that.
Thank you so much for joining me. Like I said, I want everyone to follow you on Instagram. You just make me happy every day when you come into my feed. So I love seeing your smiling face.
So happy that we met. And again, I'm so grateful to you for asking me to do this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.